God.
And you never let Dad stir the paint anymore, whatever that means.
I didn't know you knew that, Meg, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Is it bad I found out about this phrase from that episode? Shut up, kitty. No. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Family Guy, or more specifically, Meg Griffin. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying this is primarily a review on Seahorse Seashell Party, one of Family Guy's most hated episodes, and an episode I get lots of requests to review. But you guys have indicated to me you prefer when I talk about characters over episodes. So this video is primarily going to be a hybrid, which I really hope to do going forward. Whenever I do talk about episodes, not characters, I will try to do both, where the focus will primarily be on Seahorse Seashell Party, but I'm gonna sneak in some Meg Griffin lore at the beginning to analyze and summarize, and see where Seahorse Seashell Party could fit in. Now, when it comes to having a creation, especially if you want to be a writer or an artist, one of the best skills you can develop is the ability to take criticism.
Oh, it's so obvious. I would have never thought of that. I came here to learn, and I arrogantly shun your lessons.
Because believe me, it sucks being criticized, but in a way, you kind of need that feedback to get better. Obviously, there's a difference between put-down criticism and just constructive criticism, and you need constructive criticism. Heck, when I get a comment I don't like, I'll try to tell myself to listen, but not too much, because sometimes there is wisdom in those comments. However, this can get difficult if your creation gains traction, which is good for you, but it means you now have a whole sea of people checking out your product. And you know how people say you can kind of realize what kind of a person they are by how they treat waiters? Well, you can also see how they are by how they act on the internet. Something else I've realized since I've been on YouTube is you can kind of understand how a creative perceives their fans, or their critics, by how they're portrayed in their works. And one of the biggest fan criticisms is how Meg is treated by Family Guy. Frequently throughout the show, Meg is mocked as being a fat, overweight loser.
What if I said those things to you? What if I started calling you a fat, zitty loser who has no friends and smells like an old woman who has birds for pets?
Even if I don't think she looks that bad, and that's not because we have the same body type and I help run a cosplay community based on body positivity. Literally, she just looks like a brown-haired Lois with glasses, plain clothing, and a little extra meat on her bones. Like, was this intentional? But anyways, her father once shot her, he got God to will her out of existence, she was replaced by a Russian sleeper agent, etc. The big question is, why does Meg suffer? And why does Seahorse Seashell Party explain it? Well, let's discuss. To be fair, at first, Meg wasn't abused, or at least, I guess it wasn't as bad in a way. At most, Meg was just bullied at school, or had trouble making friends or fitting in, depending on the episode. When Family Guy first premiered, it tried to be a more adult version of The Simpsons, which even at its peak, or because shows like South Park outpaced it, never seemed to be that adult per se. Like, my grandma used to yell at me because I watched The Simpsons, but I would rather my kids watch that over Family Guy. But initially, Meg was a whiny, spoiled teenager who tried to desperately hang out with the cool kids, but never could, be it because she tried too hard or fell in with the wrong crowd.
I stayed after school to try out for cheerleading. I'll give you a hint. ISUCKET sucked.
Yay!
Once, she even joined a cult. Another time, she tried to pretend to be a lesbian. Even Brian put it best in Chitty Chitty Death Bang.
I can't believe you put your family before your own daughter.
She's a whiny little runt, isn't she? I said runt.
He said the right word. I won't get demonetized for that. But to be fair, again, it wasn't as bad because it was mostly concentrated at school. And obviously bullying is bad, and this is coming from a former bullying victim, but it's just school. And she always had her parents there to support her. Like in And the Wiener Is, when Lois finds out Connie D'Amico and her friends are planning to humiliate Meg, so she sends Quagmire in to get revenge on them.
So I hired an old friend to scar them for life.
Hey there, sweetie. How old are you?
16.
18. You're first.
Mom!
I like where this is going.
Which is disgusting, don't get me wrong, but from Lois's perspective, considering how they got Meg to kiss a pig,
I don't know who should be more humiliated, Meg or the pig.
Maybe she thought it was poetic justice. Like, oh, you call my daughter a pig? I'll show you a pig. But then season 4 came around and Family Guy came back from the dead. And with it, they got a whole new attitude with Meg, where rather than just being an outcast at school, Meg also became one at home. And it was really, really, really hard to watch. What was once the occasional joke became one of their most reviled running gags, with the first episode to do that arguably being 8 simple rules for buying my teenage daughter, where Peter sells her to the Goldmans to cover his tab at the pharmacy.
Are you out of your mind? You can't sell me.
Whoa! Careful getting this fish off the hook, Mort. She's got some fangs.
But even then, her family still rescued her. Like, Lois was willing to try and get Neil to sleep with her by cosplaying as Mystique.
Am I too late for the Q&A?
Yeah, but you're just in time for the T&A.
Oh, I want to cosplay as her so bad. But face paint. Because if he cheated on Meg, it would have voided the contract.
Well, look at this, Meg. Your boyfriend is violating both your contract and my wife.
Heck, even at school, her life became worse than just being picked on. Boys couldn't go out with her because they had to attend funerals for their little siblings, or, and don't make me over, just wearing a normal belly shirt is enough to get people to light themselves aflame. Even people of the same gender, which is why I will never wear one. Ugh, and I wanted to wear the Princess Leia bikini so badly. And again, even in that episode, when Jimmy Fallon sleeps with Meg and broadcasts it on SNL, Peter of all people defends her by beating him up.
Hey, Fallon, say good night, you bum. And this is for laughing and looking at the camera during every sketch you've ever been in. Who do you think you are, Carol Burnett?
Only time this whole video I feel comfortable enough saying to Peter, you go, dude. Now, I've wondered, why did the Meg bullying get so out of hand? And I have several possible reasons. But first, let's see why behind the scenes. From what I hear, it wasn't because it was funny to the writers, but not to the audience. It was because the Family Guy writing staff was primarily composed of men, and as a result, they had no clue how to write for a teenage girl. And honestly, I don't really like this excuse. If it's one person writing, sure, that's a little more excusable, although you can learn. Just do what I do, where you write them as women and then switch them around as men. And besides, you had women in the writer's room, or you knew of women. Alex Borstein, Caravallo, Cherry Chiva Prada Dumwrong, Shannon Smith, Sherry Gunfer, Kim Furtman, or even voice actors Mila Kunis, Rachel McFarlane. Rachel McFarlane was an intern at Cartoon Network. She's had writing experience. She even wrote and voiced her own characters. I'm sure you could have thought of something. Come on, have you ever read Carrie by Stephen King? That was his first novel, and yet he threw the manuscript in the trash because he had no idea how to write for a teenage girl, especially one like Carrie, who's basically Meg but with fundies. But luckily, his wife Tabitha found it and said that she would help him, and Carrie was a smash hit, and it led to his decades-long writing career. But I like to think of in-universe reasons. Like maybe the universe just despises Meg for the sake of it, or maybe after the Griffins got flanderized, they remembered how Meg was the bratty, whiny wimp, and they just started picking on her in response. Plus, unfortunately, Meg is the oldest child, and in many toxic families, the oldest is typically the scapegoat, or the one who gets blamed for everything, since they were born first. Like Summer unfortunately put it,
You're the little brother. You're not the cause of your parents' misery. You're just a symptom of it.
which is not true, but to toxic parents who don't want to admit they had a hand in that conception and ruining their own lives, it unfortunately is. Or how Peter's sister, an episode I hate for trying to make Peter sympathetic despite everything he's done to his own daughter, and being full of as many plot holes as Swiss cheese, reveals that growing up, Peter had an abusive sister named Karen, who treated him not unlike how he treats Meg. Perhaps Peter subconsciously picked up those those cues, and he doesn't realize he's repeating history. But while I don't like the episode, I do think it's hilarious they predicted the whole Karen trend, which came out like years down the line. Plus, honestly, Meg is the one child who has nobody to defend her. Lois is too distant because she's drowning in her own marriage. Chris has Peter. Stewie and Brian have each other, so that makes it easier for the Griffins as a whole to systematically beat her down. There's nobody around. Really, who does Meg have but Quagmire, who, while he does care about Meg, like a godfather, he's still a vile, unrepentant rapist who has tried more than once to get into her pants, just because he knows he can. It makes you wonder, why doesn't Brian help her? Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. However, excluding Seahorse Seashell Party, the later seasons did try to explain it. The most notable was in Road to Rupert. Peter loses his license as a result of causing a massive car pileup thanks to his drunkenness. Well, not just the car.
Why? We got reckless driving, disturbing the peace, plus the driver of one of those other cars was a virgin who's was busted by the airbags.
Since this was before Ubers and Lyfts, Peter is basically stuck at home, and as a result, Meg has to drive him around. But Peter isn't the most supportive passenger. We're not getting a Miss Daisy story out of this.
Ride around town with stinky McPoop pants. I want apple juice.
Dad, you left your apple juice at home.
I want apple juice.
You jerk. Only good boys get apple juice. But he does invite the guys with him, including Joe, who took his license. He's weirdly forgiving.
Who would you rather do? Queen Latifah or Halle Berry, but she's been dead for 6 hours?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Halle Berry if she were alive. But I did think Queen Latifah knew how to work it in Chicago. Unfortunately, Peter ends up poking the bear one time too many because he and the guys play pranks on Meg while she's driving, including Wet Willies, my least favorite prank. Whoever does that to me, you're losing an arm. Worse yet, she's such a hothead.
Hey, Meg, I lit your scalp on fire.
Don't worry, I'll put it out.
In the process, however, Meg accidentally gets T-boned and unloads all of her hatred onto the Crasher.
Meg!
Meg, I wish I could do that every day. Oh, I mean, Peter thinks it's awesome sauce his bullying caused his daughter to unload all of her emotional turmoil onto a stranger. Even to Lois, he's willing to defend her.
Meg, how could you do that? You should call that man and apologize.
Hey, don't you talk to her like that. Meg's as cool as the other side of the pillow.
He's got friends on the other side. They start to hang out together, albeit causing destruction, i.e. probably doing everything Peter wanted to do if he still had his license, but Peter explains himself.
Look, I know sometimes I give you a hard time, but Meg, I'm starting to realize I got a really wonderful daughter.
Thanks, Dad.
Aww, too bad Peter got his license back. But he does assure Meg that he'll only treat her like crap in front of other people because he has to keep up appearances. And outside of that, he'll be secret friends with her.
Who wants a glass of fresh lemonade?
What I want is a fresh glass of better daughter.
Hey.
Which in hindsight feels strangely manipulative, but okay. This could have been a good ending, like the show could continue on with the Meg abuse joke, but with the insurance for the viewer that Meg knows it's all a joke, so she's fine with it. I mean, come on, a lot of families make fun of each other, like, just to do it. They don't actually mean it. Me and my sister do it all the time. And we know it's a joke. Heck, they did some other episodes with this idea, like Meg Stinks, where Peter and Meg become buddies again, but Peter unfortunately convinces Meg to forego her studies and her college interview in the pursuit of happiness, and not that sappy Oscar bait Will Smith movie that deserves a slap. Or Peter's Daughter, where Peter realizes that he's treated Meg horribly over the years and almost got her killed.
I never realized until now how much I've taken her for granted. I mean, she's my only daughter, and I feel like I've never treated her as well as I shoulda.
And decides to treat her like a princess in order to make up for his terrible treatment of her, albeit a little overprotective. Which I do think is a good episode. It felt weird there was no reset button. I guess it's a little hypocritical, but most of the Meg Peter episodes have that little hand wave for why the Meg abuse will continue even if they got their bonding. Like maybe Peter finds out Meg isn't really pregnant, so he could be like, what? I just wasted all of this money for nothing, and I did a seductive striptease for my own daughter when you don't even have a bun in the oven. Meg, I'm right back to hating you, I'm sorry. Or something like that. But all of this came to a head in Seahorse Seashell Party. Episode discussion time, full on. Before we begin, we have to get to the nuts and bolts. Why such a title? Well, some of you told me that the title was a reference to a video called Lizards on Acid, where a guy gets high and then he says the title.
What is this, Seahorse Captain? What is this, Seahorse Seashell Party? Who didn't invite me? Why didn't I get invited, Seahorse Seahell?
And because the B-plot is about Brian getting high, it seemed fitting. Which, okay, cool beans. I think Family Guy is the reason for my obscure cache of references. Now, Seahorse Seashell Party aired as part of the Night of the Hurricane block, where Seth MacFarlane shows had to contend with a hurricane called Hurricane Flozell.
Oh, finally, a black hurricane.
Oh, it's like Sandy. They could air it like the year after Sandy, maybe? I just remember Sandy. Kinda like the Golden Girls, Empty Nest, and Nurses did several times, where the shows aired on the same network or they were made by the same people, because kind of like Family Guy, American Dad, and The Cleveland Show, they were essentially spin-offs of a spin-off, and rather than cross over, they just had them contending with a similar theme, like a full moon, or in one case, a hurricane. Ah, that's funny.
The storm's gonna be here, then in Quahog about in like a half hour. Then supposedly after that it'll go to American Dad Town.
I already gave my thoughts on the Cleveland Show's version, which I think was the best, as the worship song was hilarious and catchy, and I feel like the whole episode was a great redemption for Not All Dogs Go to Heaven. Good penance. But American Dad, I wasn't too crazy on. I feel like Stan would have been better prepared for a hurricane in that case. Or he thinks the hurricane is still going on, and yet it's been dry for like a week. Or the entire family, including him, just assumes it's no big deal, and then because nobody prepared, they have to contend with the house flooding. In the meantime, go watch Dan the Man's video on it. He talks about the entire programming block much better than I could. But whereas the Cleveland Show and American Dad had some kind of survival conflict at stake, Family Guy focused on another conflict, and part of that involved Meg and battling boredom. So let's discuss. The Griffins are watching a news broadcast for the hurricane, when all of a sudden the power goes out.
No, what happened?
The wind must have knocked the satellite dish loose.
Oh, crap.
No, my biggest fear. The TV is the only thing that keeps me from having panic attacks in my sleep. Well, that and the hydroxyzin. That means that the conflict of the episode will be the Griffins, trapped inside and having to deal with boredom and no TV to boot. And you know what? That's actually a pretty good idea. Like we saw with Carter babysitting the kids in Take My Wife, there's plenty they could do. And each of the Griffins could have their own little plot points, like Killer Vacation from American Dad. Heck, the Cleveland Show's version was partially that, since the family couldn't go on vacation like they wanted, and they had to contend with being inside, which led to Junior's distrust of religion coming out. Plus, by being trapped inside, it's technically a bottle episode, with all of the Griffins trapped in the house. They could just make fun of bottle episodes like Sim Eats Waffles, or make fun of the idea of a bottle episode, again, like Sim Eats Waffles, or make it seem like a bottle episode, and then they have every single character appear, and every CGI special effect you can possibly think of. But hey, at least it's better than anything G.I. Jose can churn out.
If you have an open wound, get some dirt or kitty litter and rub it in there to stop the bleeding. Then get some sleep and wait for the body to heal itself.
Now we know!
Why did I do 2 videos in a row talking about the greatest substance known to either man or feline? BTW, I'm not a furry. While the Griffins try to think of something to do, Brian has an idea. I guess you could say, a magical idea.
These are mushrooms.
Makes you see weird things and feel happy for a few hours. I figure we're gonna be stuck inside for a while with a storm, so it'll be a fun way to pass the time.
Again, I hate to say it, but this could be a good idea. Or a magical idea. Stupid. I know a lot of people don't like this subplot, and I'm one of them, but I think it could be something all the Griffins could do together. Yes, even Stewie, but as an accidentally. Like maybe Brian has, argument's sake, weed on his person, and Lois gets bored as hell and makes brownies for the family, without knowing what the weed is, or maybe she grabs it by accident instead of flour, or thinks it's like oregano or something, and the whole family eats it, and it leads to a bunch of wacky hijinks, or mushroom soup, or garlic mushrooms, or maybe spaghetti sauce. And again, the family doesn't know it's drugs. This could settle the fighting, like, Meg, I'm sorry, I'm such a bad dad, but you gotta see this monkey on my leg. Just saying, Frasier did an episode like that, where Niles thinks he's high off a pot brownie and it's really Martin who gets high. And Marty is a former cop. Peter knows cops. Yeah, I should get this out of the way. While the episode is primarily hated for the Meg stuff, it's also hated for another reason. And that's what Mr. Enter calls the dad noise jokes. I call it a drag-on pause, because they always drag on, then pause, then drag on, then pause. But with dad noises, it's basically where the show wastes 30 seconds or more of time with a pointless joke, like Peter staring at a screen waiting for karaoke to play, rather than actually make a joke out of it. In Quagmire's Mom, an episode that really could have benefited from having extra time. Or Conway Twitty, where they basically just show a really old clip. The jokes don't add anything to the episode, and they're usually not that funny. Or they're funny, but then it goes on 20 years too long. So it feels less like a joke and more of an acknowledgement of, oh, we couldn't think of anything, so we're just gonna burn some screen time to pad out the episode. Oh wait, commercial, yay! No, don't get me wrong, the show has done it before, in good ways, but either it related to the plot, like with Mr. Booze, where it helps to convince Joe, or it was just funny. Unfortunately, these jokes normally aren't funny. They just feel incomplete. I guess it's a bit of an unfair criticism, but the episode has such flaws that to most people, it just feels like another cherry on the top of the crap sandwich. Kitty, what kind of a sandwich has cherries on it? I don't know, Catherine, I hate cherries. Don't they have bugs in them? Or is that only strawberries and figs? But I mean Exhibit A.
Okay, one word.
Peter, you're still talking.
Okay, right. Fletch.
Is it Fletch?
It is Fletch.
Or Exhibit B.
How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
No, not the trope namer. I thought he just made that up. Wow, I haven't watched this episode in so long. But while this is happening, Brian is tweaking out much harder than that kid named Tweak. With my main guess being that because Brian typically forgets he's a dog, or that he's a humanoid dog, he took too many mushrooms compared to body size. Or being a dog, he wasn't supposed to be taking them in the first place, hence the negative, lingering effects. Aw, how I miss that. Miss what? Miss that ice cold air. Damn you, global warming. But we first get our hint of the family hating on Meg on the virtue of continuing to exist, as they all play finger bang, but refuse to let Meg participate.
Oh, no one wants to get finger banged by you, Meg.
Why don't you just go do that to yourself, Meg?
Well, I mean, she is trapped in the house and has her own room. What is she supposed to do? Peter, please tell me you bought more hot dogs. Stewie leaves the room as he finds Brian in the throes of drugs.
I'm gonna cut my ear off to prevent World War II.
Admittedly, that was kind of funny.
Lesbians and deaf women wear the same clothes.
And you know what? That too. I'm sorry, that came out of nowhere. I have no choice but to find it funny. But in all seriousness, kids, the lesson here is not to do drugs, because the war on drugs was a front from the Nixon administration to keep minorities down. Watch Adam Ruins Everything. He knows where it's at, and he has that cool, jovial, child-free uncle voice, unless you live in Oregon, and therefore this whole rant means absolutely nothing. But Stewie vows to help Brian get through his terrible high. Wait, couldn't he just sleep it off, or take a hot shower? Sorry, I know nothing about mushrooms, but Stewie is dedicated.
Do you like my soothing voice? Do you like my soothing voice?
Unclean! Peter has the idea of a sing-along, which, okay.
Okay, I'm gonna sing the opening chase music from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
No, Peter, I can't show that because it's copyrighted, but I will show clips with my narration over it. And the purpose is the double standard, because pretty much everybody gets annoyed by Peter, but not enough for him to stop. Instead, it's Meg just opening a can of soda that gets him to yell and say, "Oh my god, Meg, you're so annoying."
Damn it, Meg, will you stop that? That is so annoying.
Oh, that was annoying? What about your stupid, obnoxious humming?
Ooh, serve. Meg has finally had enough and decides to unleash 10 seasons of fury onto the Griffins and lay it bare that they can all go suck an egg for good measure, like that chick from Moral Oral.
I am sick of all you guys ganging up on me. You guys all think you're so much better than me.
Oh, Meg, that is the least fancy thing I have ever heard.
Is it bad that I hate the meme because it makes no sense? Like, when you actually have context? Like, whenever I see it, I'm like, no, that's not what it means. But let's focus on something more positive.
The wheels on the bus go round and round.
I forgot about that. And not in a good way like what Beavis and Butthead do America, which I hear is hilarious to watch in the right state of mind, I hear. I wonder about this episode, though. But I also kind of wonder what this means, because I am an English major, so we have to look too deeply into everything, even if that wasn't the point. Did they just add all of these frightening visuals in for the sake of it, or is it a reflection of Brian's subconscious? Like he secretly sees Peter as a silly, childish punk he has to protect, but whose antics and unhealthy lifestyle are gonna get him killed one day, hence him being roasted on a spit, and later, him being a chicken leg.
Did you try the chicken, buddy?
Or he loves Lois, but much like the serpent in Eden, it's gonna drive him to ruin, since he doesn't want to take responsibility for himself and his choices.
Slip me some tongue.
Or maybe he really did give Meg worms, and he doesn't want to say he did a bad thing, or it actually is haunting him.
Brian! Hide!
I mean, come on, he gave Lauren Conrad worms, and that's why they couldn't be together. Or he thinks of Meg as the lowest of the Griffins. Or he secretly hates her as much as the rest of her family, hence her being a cockroach. Or he hates Quagmire and thinks he isn't approachable, hence him being a bird that eats all the Bryans. Or he knows Stewie is evil, and if Stewie ever felt like it, he could kill him one day, but so far he hasn't, hence him being a creepy demon. I mean, there is this scene.
Brian.
Sorry if that annoyed anybody, it's the last time, I promise. And again, sorry for the jump scare, but don't you just hate it when the outside world seeps into your dreams? Like, I watch King of the Hill to fall asleep, and sometimes I'll dream of full-on episodes. Wake up, and then that episode will be playing, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that episode. It's so weird. But one jump scare later, and Brian seems to be cured, and we need to go downstairs to finish the episode, and so Brian can get some water.
Look, Meg, I don't know what your problem is. I thought Dad's humming was pretty entertaining.
Oh my god, Chris, you lying liar. You were as annoyed as anybody. Stop gaslighting yourself. Meg starts her tirade by starting off with Chris.
This is a perfect example. You're my brother. You're supposed to be on my side, and you're such a bastard to me.
How am I a bastard?
He's got a point, Meg. Unlike me, his parents were married when they had him. Lucky. But honestly, it does feel a bit weird and a little justified, since while what Meg says is true, well, she and Chris arguably have the best relationship. They treat each other like siblings, and siblings do tend to fight a lot. It just happens. And then 10 minutes later, you'll forget what you were even fighting about in the first place. And at the end of the day, you will always have each other's backs. I mean, Chris threatened to quit his job if they fired Meg, but at the same time, Meg is saying this just in the context of family arguments. Deep down, she does love Chris, but he still has a tendency to bully and gang up on her like everybody else, either because he thinks it's the right thing to do or he just doesn't know any better. But I will say, out of all of the Griffins, I feel like he's the only one who actually took those criticisms to heart, since in the later episodes, he does treat Meg pretty well, outside of the episode Crisscross, albeit too well, I guess you could say, considering Fresh Air.
Chris, our bath is ready.
I don't know what to do now. I don't have the parenting skills necessary to...
Wow, those kids are trauma bonded. Lois tries to defuse the situation, but... She isn't a saint either, no. And her hair makes her look like a circumcised hot dog, especially in silhouette. And now that I see it, you can't unsee it either.
Yes, you're right, Brian, there is. Meg seems to think she's taken some kind of stand here that's gonna make us all feel like we're inadequate.
My God, you're condescending.
You're not helping, Lois. Maybe you do deserve what's coming to you.
Oh, so what? All those things are behind me now. I'm a better person now because of those experiences.
Are you? Are you a better person?
No, she's not. If anything, she gets worse, Meg. I even made a whole list last Thanksgiving on 15 of them. And let's not forget when she ruined Christmas to teach y'all a lesson, and nothing happened because the Griffins learned they could survive without the miasma that is her. Or when she ruined the lives of several baristas just because she didn't get a stupid award that meant nothing. Oh, poor you. You want an award for holding up a line and forcing small talk. You never worked in retail, Lois, and it shows. Lois tries to defend herself, but Meg continues to chop her down like a tree, in need of toilet paper.
All the irresponsible, reckless, idiotic behavior in your past, somehow you have the nerve, the arrogance to consistently and ruthlessly point out my shortcomings.
It's true. If anything, Lois is exactly like her father, even if she looks like a clone of her mother. And yes, some episodes have her realize that, but holy crap, she can go above and beyond sometimes. Meg, take it away!
And you took a child's trust and smashed it into bits in a 17-year-long mission to destroy something that you killed a long time ago.
Woohoo! Everybody clap. Do you guys actually clap? I read the comments. A lot of you say you actually clap. But Sam, Meg, you good. I wish I could systematically tear people apart like that.
And honestly, when I turn 18, I don't know that I ever want to see you again.
But it does suck that once Meg turns 18, she does stay with the Griffins. Then again, she lives in Rhode Island, and I thought Jersey was expensive. But this speech does get to Lois, who ends up regretting how terrible of a mother she truly is.
I have been a very bad mother to you.
I just said that.
I just have this horrible, overwhelming desire to point out faults in you. I don't know where it comes from.
It's because Meg is your oldest, your only daughter, which makes it easier for you to tear her down, and you're just like your father. Honestly, Lois has a ton of internalized misogyny, and it really shows. But Peter, like a dumbass, throws his head into the ring by making jokes.
My money's on Harry Potter over there.
Oh, you think that's funny?
Well, I don't know if it's funny. I think it's clever. I mean, you got the big glasses.
And this was a long time coming.
Oh God, is she gonna do me next?
No, Stewie. As far as Meg knows, you're just a baby. Outside of this one quote.
Your only arguable accomplishments are your kids. And look at us. We're a disaster.
Hey, watch it.
But I wish Meg would do more with you than just blankly stare like she typically does when you guys get episodes or scenes together. Meg lays into Peter and basically gives what I'm assuming to be Family Guy's log line.
You just do whatever reckless thing you want to do without regard for anyone else. When you're not terrorizing the community with your impulsive escapades, you're being a total jerk to your family.
It's true, he did murder Loretta Brown, and y'all just laughed about it.
If someone in the outside world could see the way you treat me, you would be in jail.
You mean Joe? Meg, I think I have another clip you'll very much want to see.
Joe, you're too heavy. I can't hang on.
Pretend I'm your child, Lois. Nutmeg! Nutmeg!
Now, I do think Joe cares for Meg, like he said, in The Hand That Rocks the Wheelchair, but that doesn't make him as high and mighty as you might think. He still enables the abuse and doesn't tell Peter to go screw it or be kinder to Meg or anything. But this isn't getting into Peter's noggin, and Meg continues to lay waste to him like David Zaslav did to the entertainment industry.
You're a total and complete embarrassment in every possible way. You've lived half your life and you have nothing to show for it.
Meg, stop provoking my intrusive thoughts. God.
Wait a second. These are criticisms.
Oh my god, he finally got it. He did. Peter, you might have just convinced my agnostic ass that maybe, just maybe, there is a god. Maybe. Unfortunately, Peter and Lois do what all toxic families do and redirect their feelings. Like, maybe they both want to argue back at Meg, but for whatever reason, they can't, so they find other sources.
Have either of you guys been listening to me?
With Lois, it's likely because she got the dressing down of her life. And with Peter, he's probably too stupid to think of a comeback. And Chris quickly chimes in.
Dad did. Look, he's got crap on his ears.
That's unrelated.
Chris, that's a terrible word. Crap. But Chris, likely sensing the toxicity and not knowing what to do, responds back by arguing with his mother.
I don't like your cooking. You're the one who's always cooking Brussels sprouts and broccoli. Why don't we ever get any good food?
Yeah, Bonnie gives Joe Wonder Bread.
Because I told you his father's probably his favorite, who in turn argues with his father. But I find it interesting that they're arguing about problems they have with each other, albeit petty reasons they could probably fix on their own. Like the type of bread that they eat, or how they soil their clothes. Like they probably understood what Meg said, but not to the extent of it. They likely just think she's angry because. And again, it's only really Chris who understood the assignment because he actually makes a real complaint against Peter.
You eat all my Dannon yogurts!
I don't see your name on him!
You don't even like them! But you know I do, and you don't want me to have them!
You know, I've never confronted you on it, but I've often thought the same thing.
But Peter, being the primary reason they're fighting, and unable to admit that he's the one responsible for all of their problems, runs off to cry, and the Griffins go to calm him down.
Because he's a selfish, fat idiot!
You shut up, all of yous! I didn't ask to be in this family!
Now, being an Italian, I myself grew up in toxic circumstances, and something you learn the hard way is that toxic people won't change. They're like kids or old people, just let them tire themselves out. Or maybe they might change one day, but it's not like Steven Universe, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But a hard lesson is knowing when to stop and to just walk away, like in Mad Max. Like, it's brave of you to stand up for yourself, but there comes a point where you have to realize the fighting isn't going anywhere, either because they won't see what you're saying, or because they do, they just don't want to admit they're the problem. And no matter how hard you scream, no matter what you say, they're never gonna get it. And believe me, it really does suck. But Meg is left all alone in the aftermath with just Brian for company.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, fudge, not this part. Meg tells Brian that she meant every word she said, but the family can't handle not having a human stress ball, or as Meg so eloquently puts it, a lightning rod to absorb the dysfunction.
Maybe if I feel bad, they don't have to.
You know, that's incredibly noble and mature, Meg. You know, I think you might be the strongest person in this house.
Okay, you know what? If there's anybody she needs to hate, it's Brian. Because I was going to make a video on these two, but no, I held off until now. Mostly because I felt like there were too many Brian videos. But as much as Brian tries, outside of Family Cat, he is horrible to Meg. Come on guys, he's such an enabler, and ensures that whatever joy she experiences will turn to ashes in her mouth. There's the runt comment in Chitty Chitty Death Bang, or how in Not All Dogs Go to Heaven, which I did review, Meg becomes a born-again Christian, mostly to cope with the abuse her family inflicts on her. And rather than encourage this by telling her moderation isn't heresy, Brian says he's an atheist, and that the reason to him there is no God is because Meg is ugly and has an abusive family, and Brian himself isn't doing anything to help her, so he isn't one to talk. Oh, maybe it's Christian of him to do that. I did hear about that new episode where he got rid of religion because some dude wouldn't sleep with him. Oh, poor boy.
Oh no. You're right, Brian. You're right.
I'm sorry, Meg.
No, you ain't. Or indict Meg for murder, he gets an offer to write an article for Teen People, and rather than just sit Meg down and ask her some questions, or ask to follow her around, he stalks her like a lap rat.
No, Brian, just because you're writing a profile on teenage girls, it doesn't mean you have to be a creepy stalker and follow Meg around all day.
It's called research, Stewie. I'm just being thorough.
And when he finds out Meg has a prison boyfriend, rather than tell the warden or tell Meg before he tells Peter and Lois, he goes over her head and straight to her parents. Like, dude, you basically broke her trust for life. And then Meg gets arrested for harboring Luke, and rather than admitting he had a part to play in her getting arrested, he goes on a rant about the prison system.
Don't you see, that's what the penal system does in this country. It turns small-time offenders into hardened criminals. Look at Meg. They took an innocent little girl and turned her into a psychotic, sociopathic freak.
Brian, did you at all go to visit her while she was in the slammer? No, you probably were drinking and stealing more stories to rip off. Or in Barely Legal, he offers to take Meg to her dance and just gets drunk the whole time. I remember growing up and thinking that Brian was the best Griffin to Meg. Boy, was I dead wrong. Brian tells Meg that she's strong for deciding to stay with the family and be abused all her life. Probably because, much like Linda Belcher, he believes in the toxic Italian value of family.
Do you think it's possible that this family can't survive without some sort of lightning rod to absorb all the dysfunction?
Well, it's a theory, I guess.
No, I didn't think I had to talk about why it's bad to say an innocent, battered teenager shouldn't be abused, but oh my goodness, I guess I have to. Obviously, most reviewers have put it one way, but this whole scene sucks. Yes, it's meant to explain why Meg still sticks around, and why she gets abused until season 14, and yes, I've heard some people say it's meant to be ironic, but there's no hint it is ironic. It just feels dead straight, like, guys, if you're watching this, stay with your abusive husband who slaps you silly. You're feeling bad, so he doesn't have to. But let me explain why people hate it. Normally, Family Guy is a comedy, and we shouldn't have to think about the dark implications that the world and her family are beating up on a teenager. We're just meant to laugh. You guys did not have to bring it to the forefront and deconstruct it. Everybody hates Chris had the same problem when Chris stood up to his mother, and nobody likes that episode either, me included. That's why, like I said above, one of the biggest lessons a writer needs to know is how to take criticism and how to deal with it. Because episodes that touch on fan criticism almost always feel lazy and bad, like you're just writing a super long Tumblr post. And oftentimes, they don't realize where the criticism is coming from, or they don't care, so you basically portray your fans, aka the people who support you through thick and thin, like idiots. Plus, it could take away from actually interesting plot ideas, like in Ronaldo, rather than making fun of allies who try too hard, or having Ronaldo actually interact with gem monsters, they just spend 11 minutes making fun of fans who say stuff they don't like. The Bubble Bass review show was the only time I liked those types of episodes, since while they were obviously thinking about negative fans, or members of the cartoon community who ragged on them when SpongeBob was hitting rock bottom, they still make the point that they appreciated some of those criticisms. And sometimes it's okay to be criticized on the internet, because hey, at least they're talking about you. But there's also other reasons people don't like this episode, and they are very hypocritical. For example, the episode that aired after was Screams of Silence, where they say that abuse is bad, but the abuse victim chose to stay in abusive relationships, so they deserve what's coming to them. And if you don't break up with your abusive partner, it's your fault. Even if they never actually say why Brenda is staying with Jeff in the first place. Like maybe she can't support herself, or maybe she's a masochist, or maybe Jeff threatened to kill her, or she thinks she can fix him, or anything that would actually make her seem like a character. No, I thought this was a problem on Fox's end, since Family Guy's writing staff has no control about when episodes air or in what order. That's always on the network. Don't listen to Lily Orchid. Listen to Lily Simpson. But interestingly, not only does Screams of Silence come after this one in production order, but these are the only 2 holdover episodes from season 9. Like, they knew people were going to be angry, so they tried to make an episode to shield and deflect those criticisms. See, we don't actually mean it. We care so much about abuse, that was totally a joke. Even if, again, they didn't realize where it was coming from. I think a way they could have done the whole Meg needs to be abused thing angle would be to make it as outlandish as possible. That way there's more of a hint of irony. Like in Gumball, Richard has to be unemployed to the point where just being a minimum wage pizza delivery guy is enough for the universe to implode. It's hilarious and it's a great take on the status quo concept. But unfortunately, Meg goes upstairs and apologizes to her father, her main abuser.
Dad?
Go away!
Dad, come out of there.
No! I don't deserve no better than living with the shoes!
Oh, so now you realize you're to blame. Or are you just upset? But Meg doesn't stop there, and she apologizes to everybody.
None of you have done anything wrong. I took all my problems out on you guys, and that wasn't fair. I'm sorry, you guys.
You're a...
Yes, I am.
Internal scream. Wait, I live in an apartment. I can't scream. And it's like 4 a.m. But seriously, remember the drugs? That feels a lot better than what happened. But yep, this is why the world hates Meg. Because they said so. And it sucks because Meg doesn't deserve the abuse. Except for friends without benefits. Sure, she was whiny, but that's no reason to be abused. She's just a teenager who wants to be loved and appreciated. You know, like most teenagers. And besides, they had such an easy concept. Trapped inside, nothing to do. Imagine the possibilities. If you want a character who exists for the sake of getting tortured, go watch Klaus Heisler. He's a Nazi, he makes fun of people, he practically digs his own grave. And hey, he's an adult, so he has it coming to him. Anyhow, bye.